So I want to offer a couple of metaphors for the surrendering mind based on or inspired by, in a way, a verse, very famous verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which refers to the idea of everything being an offering into the sacred fire. And both the offering and the sacred fire being Brahman, which is another word for the true self, the self which is beyond thought, which is beyond change, which is beyond duality, which is beyond qualities, that self which I am, which you are. And I'm going to read the Bhagavad Gita verse just briefly because it's a beautiful verse. You know, the idea of a fire sacrifice, by the way, has been an ancient one in Hindu culture. And the verse is from chapter 4, and it's verse 24, and it reads as this: Brahman is the offering, Brahman is the oblation, poured out by Brahman into the fire of Brahman. Brahman is to be attained by him who always sees Brahman in action. And the way I like to interpret this is that at every moment, when the mind arises with a desire or a thought, that the surrendering mind drops it, lets it fall into the fire of self. By letting it go, it falls into the fire of self, and it then serves as an offering. And there's a couple of interesting passages, you can see from Ramana Maharishi in his talks where he talks about this sort of process. He says, and I really enjoy this little passage where he says, the enlightened mind, it may seem still, but it's actually whirring at an incredibly fast rate, so fast that it seems still. And in that whirring is, in fact, this very process of offering. He says, even for the jnani, the one who knows, right? Ego could, it's a debatable point, could be still said to arise in the form of thought, but then it's burnt up by connection to the source or self. How is it burnt up? It's burnt up by being let go into that. And it's happening so quickly that no sooner than the thought arises that it falls into that sacred fire. And I have a few other metaphors that I think fit the situation. So for example, you could imagine a kind of whirring circular blade of the kind used to cut wood. And it just whirs and whirs. And then as thoughts come down, they're like logs that are coming right down onto that blade and are being cleanly split and falling away. That blade is just whirring and whirring, and the thoughts come right down as logs, and then they're split over and over and over again. Or another metaphor for it might be something like a kind of fast spinning polishing instrument or vibrating polishing instrument. Wherever it touches, it polishes away the impurity. So the surrendered mind is vibrating like that. And as soon as a thought touches it, it's polished away. Or think of a tornado. The very tip of a tornado. The very point at which that tornado touches the earth is blown away. Wherever it touches, that's dispersed. So this is pointing to the concentration inherent in the non-grasping, the non-attachment, which, when it comes into contact with thought, immediately destroys it by failing to engage with it, and thus offers it up as a kind of continuous offering. No, 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 no. Offered, 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 right? However many possibilities come up in the mind as to what to do, as to what to want, as to what to fear, all of those possibilities, all of those initiatives are offered into the fire, offered into the fire. And only what happens, that happens involuntarily, accidentally, spontaneously. Even planning. Planning could happen, but planning must happen itself, must happen in that manner. Essentially, without your involvement, the planning could happen. The planning could happen like any other action. Planning itself must happen seemingly contradictorily in a spontaneous way. I'll say one more thing about this. This very offering is simply a continuous falling away. It is a declining to touch, a declining to rise. And so just as one may see the thoughts as falling into the fire, one could just as easily also see oneself as in a steady position and all the bubbles going up all around, not being touched. And that too is the offering. And therefore, one is the sacred fire. One is the sacred fire whose offering is the accommodation, the non-engagement. And as much as that very non-engagement generates a kind of energy, a kind of freshness or creativity, and thus a desire to act, right? Again, that is also offered. So that one is kind of this continuous reverse waterfall of things flowing upward without being touched, a kind of perfect pipe, perfect mechanism which doesn't interfere.